in Rishikesh in the Himalayas at 25, not as a seeker. I would love to say, my ego would love to say, that I recognized the superficiality of this world and that I had, prayed to God to give me a guru, to take me to a spiritual place, to open my eyes. But I had no idea that this world even existed. The world that I lived in was a world focused on academic success, career success, material success, social success. The idea that there was even this thing of spirituality, embarrassingly, was not something that I even knew. I look back and I think you should have known. Like, how did you miss it? Wasn't part of my worldview. I didn't know anyone who was spiritual. It was a pre-internet age, pre-smartphone age, and there was just nobody in my community who was spiritual. And so I get there, and I only agreed to go to India. I was a quite reluctant traveler to India. I loved traveling in general, but didn't really know anything about India, didn't really have a pull to India, except I was a very strict vegetarian. My friends used to call me a vegetarist. And I agreed to go because I had seen in my travels all over the rest of the world that if I could find an Indian restaurant, I could actually get pure vegetarian food without a major headache or a fight or trying to deal with languages that I didn't speak in a pre-Google Translate age and time. And standing on the banks of Ganga in Rishikesh had such an extraordinarily powerful spiritual transformation, experience, awakening, whatever you call it, that I knew that that's where I was meant to be. But that was my physical journey. Your physical journeys are vastly different. We all have different dharmas. Nothing is better or worse or higher or lower. The shift that's critical is a shift from how we think. What I call the Hollywood mindset to the Himalayan mindset. And the Hollywood mindset says you are your body. The size, the shape, the color, the age, the bank account. And along with that, as Swamiji was speaking about so beautifully, that we are our thoughts. I am miserable. I am anger. As though somehow I am serotonin, or I am norepinephrine, or I am dopamine, or I am an electrical impulse coming down a nerve in the brain. Well, we know that we're not that. Obviously, I'm not, a chemical-filled vesicle at the end of a neuron. Like, we know that we're more than that. I'm not an electrical impulse. But all of our thoughts are patterns of chemical and electrical behavior in the brain. But the Hollywood way of thinking says that is you. This physical being, the body, the brain, where it's been, what it does, how people think about it. And so we suffer. We began by speaking about suffering. We suffer in that ignorance. The Himalayan way of thinking, which you do not have to actually be in the Himalayas for, says you have a body, but you are not the body. And that's, for me, what I have found to be the end of that suffering. Because otherwise we identify as the history, as the anger, as the misery, as the jealousy, as the betrayal, as the harm. We live our lives as victims of this, sufferers of that. And so we suffer. Competition, not enoughness, conflict, separation, polarization. And not only do we suffer, but we bring suffering unto others. When I feel separate, then I can harm. And whether it's someone of a different race or religion or color or sexual orientation or species, I can bring harm when I feel separate. But when we realize I am soul, in this particular body, okay, it's my package. It's like I drive, this type of car and you drive that type of car. But I'm not the car. No more the car than the dustbin. And that's the end of suffering. But it's really not a location situation. I, just before coming here, spent a few days in the mountains in Switzerland. And I was taking a walk the first day, and it was this very small, quaint, beautiful mountain. I'm a mountain lover, so they're my very, very happy place. And of course, the Himalayas are the best, but when you're not there, where do you go? So the Alps, here we are. And I'm taking this beautiful walk along a river, and I was having this thought of, if people could just live in these beautiful natural places, we wouldn't suffer. And just as the universe teaches lessons, 2-3 minutes later, coming right toward me are these two women gabbing with each other, but in such an animated way, and they were very upset. And as they got closer, I caught enough of the conversation in my broken French to understand one of them was complaining about their neighbor. She was saying, enough, I can't take it anymore, and the neighbor this, and the neighbor that, and just all agitated. And I thought, well, of course. Doesn't matter where you are, because it's the games of the mind. And so the freedom comes not from moving the body, but from shifting the mind. And wherever you are, that is possible. Turn your shower into an abhishek. Yes, if you can be with us on the banks of Ganga performing abhishek ceremonies together, it's a beautiful offering of water and other sacred substances onto the divine. But stand in your shower. You are divine. You are not separate from divinity. Have an abhishek in your shower. When you drink water, think about it. As you're taking achman, you're taking sacred water in your hands. It's not just chug, chug, chug as we walk down the street and we're texting somebody. As you move through the world, can you see that sacred in every blade of grass, every drop of water, every being of every species? I find myself falling to the ground, literally in tears of devotion, to trees, to bodies of water, to nature itself, to mountains themselves. So it doesn't matter where you are. Your soul doesn't need a passport. It's not about going somewhere. It's about experiencing the truth of who you are. And right here, right now, is actually your best chance. It's your only chance. Only in this moment, wherever you happen to be in this moment, in this breath, because you cannot be peaceful tomorrow or yesterday. You can only experience it right here, right now. So this moment, this place, wherever you may be, is exactly the place for you to make that mental shift. But it's got to be a conscious, deliberate shift of the mind. And I'll tell you just lastly, it's given what I've experienced on a personal level in moving through airports and airplanes and diversions and cancellations and all kinds of other stuff, it's a lot more peaceful journey. If we can learn to just move the mind instead of have to run around with the body, it's more powerful and it's a lot easier.
Thank you, Sadhviji. Staying with you, Sadhviji, on your personal journey, and we know that you regularly speak about dealing with things that all of us here have to deal with every single day: trauma, anxiety, addiction, and we deal with it many different ways, but you talk about dealing with it through spirituality. Can you share with us what inner shift you had personally
Sure.
that made the greatest difference for your healing?
Sure. And
how can others learn from that?
Yeah, sure, of course. And I'll go more into this tomorrow. Tomorrow's session is entirely around healing from trauma in all of its manifestations, whether severe trauma or just the trauma of being a human on the planet today, through yoga. But for now, two pieces to me that have been the most powerful and important. Number one, forgiveness. If you can't forgive, you can't be free. Core lesson number one. Do not think that you will ever find freedom from whatever you are suffering from until you can forgive. But the critical piece is we don't usually forgive because we feel like, well, A, that kind of absolves them of what they did, that somehow if I forgive, it means what they did is okay. And that is myth, like major myth number one. We are not the karmic police. I always say, until and unless God comes down and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, my secretary's on holiday, would you mind keeping track for me? Until and unless that happens, don't worry, you're not the karmic police. The law of karma is perfect. Whatever someone is due, they're going to get it. You don't have to be God's secretary and keep track of who's due what. Forgiveness is not because what the other person did is okay. There are things people do that are morally, ethically, spiritually, legally absolutely wrong. Unforgivable even, you could say. Punishable. But we forgive anyway. And we forgive because regardless of what someone has done to us, we deserve to be free. I'm going to say that again, in case anyone missed it. Regardless of what anyone has done to you, you deserve to be free. But holding on to the pain, the anger, the identification as that victim is literally like saying, okay, you hurt me. You betrayed me, you cheated me, you abused me, whatever it is. Now, I'm going to take the most precious thing in this human birth, my freedom, my joy, my bliss. And I am going to offer it today and every day of the rest of my life on the altar of your ego, your arrogance, your unskillfulness, your violence, your harm. Why in the world would we do that? But that's what holding on does. So forgiveness for me was critical. And that is, it is not easy. As Swamiji said in the beginning, not easy, but simple. Not complex, not esoteric. But you have to value freedom more than you value a good story. We value our stories more than we value our freedom. And we don't want to let go of them because they're such good stories. And when we are miserable, or when we are addicted, or when we are unable to step up to the plate of our life, or when we don't trust, or when we don't have courage, these stories are such great excuses. Well, see, I don't trust because. I don't take risks because. I don't believe in myself because. I'm not qualified for enlightenment because. But the goal of life is not to have a good excuse. At the end of the day on your deathbed, nobody says, oh, well, thank God, at least I had a good excuse. It is not the highest goal of life, I promise you. Let go of the excuse, let go of the story. The freedom is so much juicier, so much sweeter, so much more everything. So forgiveness. And number 2 is core Advaita Vedanta, except I didn't know that. But it was an experience that I had and just became more and more strong, which was that which happened was awful and wrong, but it didn't happen to me. And I was gifted with an awareness and an experience that that the core of who I am was untouched, unharmed, untainted. I had moved, up until that moment in my life, I had moved through my life feeling like there was something almost inherently wrong with me because I had been abused. And when, we know psychologically when that happens in early childhood, we blame ourselves and make all kinds of stories about why it happened to us. I must be unworthy, dirty, bad, wrong. And suddenly in that moment, I realized, number 1, that I was inseparable from the divine, that I was whole, I was full, I was complete, I was Purna. That fullness was me. And that which had happened had not happened to me. That didn't make it any less bad. But it gave me that distance, as Swamiji was speaking about, from I'm not the one who is abused. And it's not a bypass, it's not denial. It was a deep, deep awareness of a part of me, the truth of me, that no matter what happened, is whole, is pure, is perfect, is inseparable from the divine. And those were the 2 core pillars, you could say, of the healing. And it's still work. I mean, not now, thankfully, by God's grace, but at that time, it was still work. So it's not like poof. But it's such strong pillars that they then support you as you continue in the rest of the work that you're doing. Yeah.
When you, Sadhviji and Swamiji, both of you actually, when you start to understand that you are not your body-mind, exactly what you've been talking about there, it didn't happen to you. So when we understand this concept of that we're not the body-mind, but you still suffer emotionally, what's your advice to move from theoretical Vedanta into a lived experience of it? Swamiji.
So from moving from theoretical Vedanta to the lived experience of it. But before that, I want to follow on with a similar anecdote. When she was talking, Sadhviji was talking about the 2 ladies she came across in the Swiss Alps. If only people lived in the Swiss Alps, they would be so much happier. And immediately those 2 were there and they were not happy at all. I was smiling because I remembered when I became a monk, I went off into the Himalayas like many monks do. At one point, I was living in a little cottage, and my first experience of, begging from household to for my food, like traditional monks do. I mean, you do that when you become a monk, but that's more a formality. But when you're actually out there in the mountains. So I remember I was climbing up. It was nearly 10,000 feet high in the mountains. I come across this little village, beautiful, stunning, on the side of this slope of a mountain. And I go in there. There's a farmer's house. These are people who farm on the sides of the mountain slopes in summer, and in winter when it's all frozen. They have an alternate village which they go down to at the slope, at the foot of the mountain. And I go in there. They're traditional. They're very welcoming of monks. and they say, Mahatma Ji, oh monk, will you take the food or are you going to eat here? So I didn't have my begging bowl. I said, okay, I'll eat here. And this gentleman, this farmer, he invited me into his courtyard, and he asked his daughter-in-law, the lady of the house at that time, to bring food for the monk. And he served me. He was so devout and is talking about spiritual matters. And I thought, wow, such simple folk and so pure of heart. These are people who can, really become spiritual if they make the slightest effort. They can, God realization, devotion, knowledge, all these are easy to attain if you have such a pure and simple mind. And the moment I was thinking this, he started. He said, my daughter-in-law, she doesn't listen to me. And it's the same old complaint repeated across the plains of India in a million households. It's up there 10,000 feet in the Himalayas too. So I realized, oh, I see. So it's the same problem. There's a saying, no matter where you go, there you are. Now, so I realized after spending some time by myself and wandering in the Himalayas, living on alms, I never lived in a cave, but in cottages, huts. I realized that was wonderful, but the real spiritual challenge, the real place you have to work on, it doesn't depend on so much whether you are in the Himalayas or in Henley here. It is yourself. It's ourselves. The real issues are within us. So where is the place where you practice yoga? Where is the place where you practice Vedanta? It is, yes, it's on your yoga mat. It's in your yoga school. It is in the ashram. All of those places. But really, it is ourselves. Wherever you go, there you are. Now, we have to take a look within ourselves and relate all practices to ourselves. The question was, how do you transform theoretical Vedanta into lived Vedanta? The question comes up because, especially in Vedanta, at first, your first encounter, it seems like a lot of theory. It seems like books and talks and verses and Sanskrit and arguments and philosophy. Well, a lot of theory. It sounds a lot like, people in England would say, sounds like uni. You're going to class, to university. But actually, it is not so. I wish I had known this earlier. It took me years to come to this understanding, something that I wish the teachers had pointed out again and again at the beginning, that it's all the talking about that you. Wherever you go, you are there. That's where you are. It's always talking about the you. So the way to make this quote-unquote theoretical Vedanta, lived Vedanta, is to always relate the theory to ourselves. So when the Vedanta teacher says, you are not the body, instead of thinking, oh, I'm not the body, so why am I not the body? These are the arguments. No. First start with the lived feeling of the body. Here is the body. Do I feel I am the body? You say, yeah, sort of. And now what is Vedanta telling me? The changing and unchanging argument which we saw, the seer and the seen argument, the consciousness and object of consciousness argument, keep relating it to our own lived experience. Right here, right now. I love the example of the child being asked, what's the nose? I repeat that often. A child was asked, what is a nose? And the child will never tell you that it's a respiratory organ or the olfactory sense organ. The child will say, this is a nose. Here. So to transform quote-unquote theoretical teachings of Vedanta into lived Vedanta, we have to be like the child. This is the nose. Body, you're not the body. Here is the body. Here is the feeling that I am the body. Now use these teachings to take a look and see whether I am really the body or not the body. Nobody is denying the experience of the body. Yeah. But notice the words, experience of the body. The body is not just by itself. It is something presented to us in experience. In other words, if you translate into Vedantic terms, it is presented to us in consciousness, in awareness. So I guess that's one clue how we convert Vedanta classes, books, verses, arguments into life itself. By continuously knows, here, my life, what does that mean to be in my life?
on a personal level, to just share how I, on a personal level, do this. So, as Swamiji spoke, this core teaching is I'm not the body. There's a beautiful meditative practice called Neti Neti, not this, not this. And it takes you in a meditation, quite literally, through the entire body. We won't do it here, we'll run out of time, but you can imagine how it goes. And it's basically, I am not the shawl that I'm wearing or the sari that I'm wearing. I'm not the skin beneath my clothes. I'm not the blood beneath the skin. And with each thing you say, the mind goes, yeah. And these are easy. We understand. I change my clothes, but I'm still here. My skin sloughs off and regenerates, I'm still here. It's not that you get a sunburn and you peel and somehow you've disappeared, or you donate blood, or you get a blood transfusion and you've disappeared. And you go through layer by layer. I'm not the bones, I'm not the organs. And again, the mind, it's really easy. No mind says, oh no, of course you are your bones. We know I break a bone and I'm still here. And then you get more subtle. And you get into what I was speaking about earlier with I am not serotonin. I am not dopamine. I am not an electric impulse, which of course then means I am not the thoughts, the emotions, the memories. Every single thing that takes place in my brain takes place through a pattern of electricity and chemical interaction. If I'm not the electricity and I'm not the chemistry, I'm not the thought, the feeling, the emotion, the memory. And you go layer by layer by layer by layer into a place of, depending on which way you come in, emptiness or fullness. But it's both exactly the same experience, just whether we call it the emptiness or the fullness, but it's that experience, that place in which the very truth of who you are is felt. There's no longer any word to say. It's not, I am soul, because that's still in my brain. That's a thought my brain is having. And as any of us who has had theoretical knowledge knows, it doesn't actually help alleviate the suffering. It's got to be lived experience. So you go through that until you come to this moment where there is nothing left to say you are not. And if you don't run from there, because it's scary for the ego mind that a lot of us are so used to depending on. Like, I don't have semantics to deal with this moment. What is this? What? And so then, of course, the mind comes in and goes, oh, this is it. Yeah, this is what they were talking about. And then the minute you have that, it's gone. Because then the mind has taken over. But if you can just sit in that space, the experience arises. But what I wanted to actually share was a slight variation of this in terms of the bringing it into daily life, is not only in the seated meditative posture where it's really powerful, but as you move through the day. Because we forget. You remember something deeply in your meditation, and then you get caught up in something during the day and you forget. And so for me, on a personal level, my practice is about helping me remember as much as I possibly can during the day. And so, for example, I frequently will eat something or drink something. I'm a good hydrator, so I drink a lot of water, try to eat regular meals. And so you just tie in a remembrance. Doesn't have to necessarily be, an entire chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It can be a 30-second check-in. Ah, yes. Thank you. It's gratitude. It's reconnection. It's re-remembrance. Every time you're going to take in food, every time you're going to take in something to drink, a cup of tea, whatever it may be. Are you a driver? Well, every time before you turn on the ignition. Do you sit on your email all day long? Well, every time before you hit send or check or whatever it is. tie remembrance into something that you're already doing. And I love the Neti Neti because all day long, we have so many times to forget. Somebody will say to you, oh, you're awful, I hate you, you're stupid. And immediately we react or we feel badly. That's the moment. Neti Neti. Neti Neti. I am not that person's projections. I am not the thought pattern that person is having and putting onto me. I am not the body to which they are speaking. Neti Neti. But then it also goes the other way. Oh, you are wonderful. You are the best. You are amazing. Neti Neti. Not this. Otherwise, that's a lot harder. Like, we love to take in the good stuff. But as Bhagavan Krishna said in the Gita, you know, the yogi is the one who's the same, that equanimity in pain and pleasure, gain and loss, success and failure. It's both. You're walking down the street, you see your reflection in a window of a shop, and the mind goes, oh my God, you've gotten so fat. Neti Neti. Neti Neti, not the body. And not the thought projection about the body. Not the culture in which we've been raised to believe that this is what a body should look like. But similarly, you catch a reflection and the mind goes, oh, looking sexy. Neti Neti. And so there's all kinds of really beautiful, fun ways to literally turn whatever you're doing into ways to keep remembering, keep remembering, keep remembering.
Thank you. Keep remembering to clap, everyone. Swamiji talked about his trip as a monk up the mountainside, and Sadhviji's told you about her trip to come to Maganga and how they both got there. They both come from traditions of renunciation. They both have renunciation as a central role in your life, whether it's to Maganga and whether it's to service or to Ramakrishna mission. What does renunciation look like for us, for householders, for professionals, for people in the 21st century? How can you explain what renunciation, both of you, means for us? Because both of you, your life is a renunciant's life.
I can, it's a deep and important question, but I can put it in one word. Jnana or knowledge. Renunciation is knowledge. Knowledge is renunciation. In what sense? I can speak about it in terms of the Isha Upanishad, which says this entire universe of all the moving and the unmoving is to be covered in God. That's literally the word used. Isha Vasyam is to be covered in God. And of course, the inquiry there shows that covered means uncovered. God is already there. The divinity is already here. And uncovered means discovered. And you discover something through inquiry, into looking into it. But then it goes on in the next line to say, by this renunciation, this knowledge is the renunciation. By this renunciation, you live life, you experience life. Tena tyaktena bhunjita. And it goes on to hammer home the idea of renunciation. Ma gridha kasya svidhanam. Do not covet, for whose is wealth. Now you put it together. See, the context of this is, often when we talk about renunciation, it seems to be a life-killing solution. Swami Vivekananda says, when we come to religion or spirituality, they offer a solution to the problem of human life, or of suffering, problem of lack of fulfillment. Yes, you can overcome suffering. But the answer they give is often seems to be worse than the cure seems to be worse than the disease. He gives a story of the little, the fly which sat on the man's head, and his friend came to help him. The fly was buzzing around and sitting on his head all the time. So his friend came and gave such a blow. He killed the fly, but he killed the man too. And the answers given by spirituality to our problems seems, you have problems in life? Yeah. Well, don't have a life. Then there'll be no problems. Go off into the Himalayas, don't have money, don't have property, don't have relationships, don't have a house, don't have phones, no connectivity, nothing, into the mountains, off with you. Then you'll be happy. Maybe you'll be happy, maybe not. But that doesn't seem to be a practical solution. Well, you come to the Upanishads, what it says is, I can put it more powerfully in Vivekananda's words. He who runs off into the mountains to meditate and die in the Himalayas, to attain enlightenment, he has missed the way. He who plunges into the vanities and the foolishnesses of life, he too has missed the way. And this is very contradictory, because we think it's a binary. Either you plunge into all of this, or you withdraw from all of it. What else is there? Vivekananda says, no, in both cases you have missed the way. Then what is the way? He says the way is to divinize life itself. It is to see divinity within yourself, divinity, pure consciousness, Brahman, Atman, the Buddha nature, whatever you call it. It's there. It's right here. We do not see it. It is you. We do not see it. And to see it in everybody else. And Vivekananda said, my mission in life can be put in a few words. It is to teach unto humanity their inner divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. So can you make it manifest? Yes, in the Himalayas. Yes, you can. But also here in Henley, in London, in Calcutta, in Delhi, in New York. You can make it manifest in household life, in relationships, in a job. But the core, if you want renunciation there, the core should be knowledge. That I am that divinity, and it is that I see that divinity everywhere. My core is, the whole worldview is to remain centered in that. So my worldview is not defined by money, by my relationship status, by my problems. We often define our lives with our problems. Or even by my ambitions or hopes. All of those will be there as peripheries. But the central sun, the blazing sun in our lives, is that which is glowing all the time within us, inside and outside. So that knowledge is renunciation in the Isha Upanishad, I see that. Yep.
For me, renunciation has really been about surrender. The logistic renunciation, as in the monastic vows of celibacy and all of that, that by God's grace, that actually came really easily to me. Separate, longer story, different time story. But that part, when you talk about the, renunciant life, that came actually quite easy. The real journey of renunciation for me has been a surrender, a renunciation of the idea that I somehow was running this show, that I was in charge, that I knew. And it really, for me, has been about a surrender. And surrender gets a really bad rap. People feel like surrender is, okay, you're failing, you've lost everything, throw in the towel, white flag, you win, I lose, surrender. No. Surrender is actually what I have found a really, perhaps the most powerful choice, intention, because what you are renouncing is that which you didn't actually even have to begin with. People will say, well, I don't know whether I should surrender or not. And my question always is what's your option? I mean, if the universe were there saying, okay, so would you like to surrender, or do you really want to hold on, and if you hold on, I'll do things your way? Well, then we would have an argument. But the universe isn't going to do things your way. Just because you like wearing a bikini doesn't mean winter's not going to come. It's not like the winter says, oh, she really likes her bikini. Okay, fine, we'll just skip winter this year. It's going to come anyway. Surrender, or for me, that renunciation was an awareness of, oh, okay, so this is the flow of the universe. Can I get out of my illusion that I am running the show, that it is up to me, that it is about me, and align myself with the flow of the universe? And with not a sense of capitulation, but a sense of a trust fall into the universe. An awareness that the divine is there. There's one of my favorite teachings, simplest, but for me, one of my most favorite teachings of this in the Bhagavad Gita is this very simple teaching of Mamnu Smard Yudhyacha. Remember me and fight the war. And the reason that I love it so much, and I share it all the time, is because it's both. Meaning, so many of us live in this, are we supposed to be human doings or are we supposed to be human beings? We're taught in so many of these quasi-spiritual places, do less, be more. You're not a human doing, you're a human being, like just be, don't do. And of course, Bhagavan Krishna dispels that entire notion that you could stop acting, that whatever we're doing is an action, but that the key is the being while doing, and that we're doing. Surrender is not, renunciation is not an abdication of responsibility or an abdication of action. It's a freeing of ourselves from the illusion of control, the illusion of doership, so that we can actually be a channel through which the divine can flow. And that, for me, is what the renunciation has really been about. So it's not don't act, don't do, but it's recognize, as that teaching from the Gita, remember me, means anchor yourself in the divine. Remember, I'm running the show, not you. I'm the director, I'm the producer, I'm the casting director, I'm the set designer. I'm the whole show. But you've got a role. Play that role. And the best way to play the role is as empty as you can. I want to just share a quick story on a personal level about this. When the very first time that I ever gave what we call satsang, a spiritual talk that is in response to the moment, that isn't a prepared speech on a stage of this is my topic and here's my, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, but that in the presence of truth experience. And we were sitting in my guru, Puja Swami Sarvapriyananda's garden after the evening Ganga Arti. And we were gathered, and people would come and they would ask questions or just take blessings. And there was this group from abroad that had come, and they asked him a question, and he says, Sadhviji. And I think it's Sadhviji, comma. And I'm waiting for the rest of the instruction. And I think he's going to say, like, Sadhviji, go get them my book in which I talk about this exact question they just asked. Or Sadhviji, go tell the kitchen that these people are going to have dinner after satsang. And he doesn't speak, and I turn, and he's sitting there and his eyes are closed and he's in meditation. And I realize it was Sadhviji, period, not Sadhviji, comma. And he was wanting me to answer the question. And so I closed my eyes, and I've always been a good academic, and I'd written lots of papers and articles, and even things channeling Puja Swamiji by that point of different things. And in my mind, in my academic life, I always had worked off of note cards. My parents had taught me to use these 3x5 index cards of, question, answer, question, answer. And so I start trying to arrange note cards in my mind of how I'm going to best answer this question. What's my opening statement, and how am I going to support it, and how it's going to go. Anybody who's ever been stressed at all about anything knows the impact of stress on performance. And so as I'm trying to think and I'm getting more and more anxious, these note cards in my mind are blowing all over the place. I can't read a word on them. They are blank. I cannot gather them. I'm panicking. I open my eyes. I look at him thinking, my guru wouldn't really do this to me. This was just a joke. He's going to come in and, save the day. And I look at him, and he's just... And so I close my eyes again. And in my mind, I bow to him. And I say to him in my mind, I am so sorry, I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me. And again in my mind, I then sit back up and I open my eyes fully prepared to just face the shame of having this group of people staring at me, waiting for something of which I don't have. I was doing public speaking by that point, but that was like a prepared thing. I knew what I was going to talk about. I had time to arrange the index cards in my mind well in advance. This on the spot, be present, I wasn't there yet. And I opened my eyes fully prepared. All right, here we go. This is my moment of shame. And I opened my eyes and I ever so gently opened my mouth just to exhale. And suddenly words start flowing. And I'm speaking and I'm looking out and people have tears coming down their eyes. And later on, people in the ashram said, I heard you gave a beautiful satsang. What did you say? It's like, I have no idea. And I tell you, decades later, it's the only way it works, to this day. It is the awareness of, I don't have it in me. It is not in me. And the getting out of the way, and this isn't just about giving satsang, this is about living life, that allows that divine flow to flow. And so for me, the renunciation is getting out of the way. My prayer every day is, oh God, empty me. Empty me of the ego. Empty me of the attachments. Empty me of that which thinks I know something. So that there's more spaciousness for you to flow through. And that's something regardless of what lifestyle you're living that we can all do. And I tell you, it works. It works so beautifully for me.
Beautiful. Could I just add a footnote to that? When you were saying this, I just remembered the last part of it, getting out of the way. A very senior monk in our order just once said, it is the trained mind which gets out of the way easily. So that's the value of all the bhakti and the yoga and the study and all the practice that we do. It gets out of the way much more easily if you have a trained mind, a yogic mind.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, and then we're going to open it to questions from the audience. This one's quite pertinent, and this one, I think, is something that is prevalent within all society, especially in the UK, especially worldwide at the moment. But we live in a world that's filled with injustice. It's filled with conflict, war, genocide, and urgent crisis. How do we find the right balance between meditation and action? How do we know when to sit in stillness or when to stand up and act? That's the last question for both of you, just to address something which I'm sure is very much in everyone's mind in this audience today.
Yes. I think the first thing as spiritual seekers, practitioners, that we should do in this situation is to be that. What we claim to be, what we understand ourselves to be. There's a word in Sanskrit, sadhaka, a spiritual practitioner. If I understand myself to be that, to embody that to myself and to the people around me and to society at large. That's our first responsibility, because that's what we can really give to others. To be the peace we study about, we aspire towards, and to manifest it. Now that manifestation can actually be done through work, through service. That's an extremely powerful yoga, the yoga of seva, of service, where I am here embodying an ideal and trying to be of help. Swami Ranganathanandaji, who was the 13th president of our order, he would sum up spirituality in a very simple way. He would say, what is spirituality? When I close my eyes, I find peace within. When I open my eyes, my attitude is, what can I do for you? So that's our role, especially in times of crisis. When it becomes more difficult, let us look back upon the spiritual traditions which we are practicing and see how, indeed, is it benefiting me, helping me to rise above the turmoil and radiate it outwards. It could be through just life, living that life. It could be through a smile. It could be through the work that I do in the community, in your jobs, in career, or it could be through actual seva, service, in some form, in some sector. But it also could be, there are people who are completely inward, withdrawn, yogis, silent, and it's not that they are not useful to society. Their very presence, they're embodying the spirituality. They're being centered in Brahman, in that limitless light, is a great blessing to humanity. Vivekananda would say, such yogis, there are few of them, but they may remain cloistered in a cave, but never imagine that they're of no use to society. For the few spiritual thoughts that vibrate in their minds, they will penetrate through the rock of the caves and permeate the cosmos and be ready to come to the help of all beings who are suffering and aspiring.
I think it's important to realize that the stillness and the action, while in our lives we absolutely have to practice moments of being still and actually make sure that we spend at least a certain number of minutes every day, ideally morning and evening, in a still place, a still posture for our meditation, for our japa, for our prayers, that we do our yoga, our asana practices. But those become the times of being charged. It's like if you want your phone to work, for some period of time every day, you have to just leave it charging, or it's not going to work. There has to be a moment of charging. And those still moments are critical, but they're critical because they charge us to be able to live in action. And whether it's just that our nature as we move through the world and whatever we do, we are vibrating at such a sacred frequency that we literally are transforming people, like the yogis that Swamiji was speaking about, or whether it's that we are on the front lines of war, of violence, of hunger, whatever it may be. Either way, we need those recharging moments. But then we recognize that when we rise from that cushion or from that mat, our meditation stays with us. It wouldn't be a very good phone if the minute you unplugged it, it lost all of its charge. The whole point is I've charged it, now it should work all day. We should be able to carry the fragrance. You know, if you're walking through department stores, I haven't been in a department store in decades, but when I was a kid and I used to go with my mom or my grandma, you'd enter, wherever you would enter was always the cosmetics place at the entrance doors of the grocery store. Department store. You'd enter and they would have people with fragrances, and you'd walk by and they would spritz you with their fragrances. And my grandmother taught me as a very young girl that the good fragrances were the ones that lasted, and the junk fragrances were the ones that by the time you were out of the cosmetic section had already gone and you couldn't smell it. Our spiritual practice is like the good, expensive fragrance. You spritz it in the morning, and it stays with you. It's not that all day long you have to be walking down the street spritzing yourself. That should make you check the quality of your, metaphoric fragrance. If your meditation doesn't last as long as you turn on your phone or you meet your family in the kitchen or you get to work, it means there's something perhaps that could be tweaked in your meditation practice. Because ultimately, it should be able to sustain you in remembrance. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have moments to keep reminding us, keep reminding us, keep reminding us. But then here's the piece. We're living through the world. We must act. Core teaching, Bhagavad Gita, we're all acting. The question is how? At this moment, I deeply believe it's an all-hands-on-deck moment. I do not believe, other than some of these very, very powerful, very enlightened yogis whose dharma it is, and they know that, to have come into this world and hold that vibration. Other than that, I do not believe any of us has come onto earth with the dharma of sitting this one out, or with the idea that somehow the sum total of our spiritual action is that we've, forwarded something that we got on WhatsApp, or we've written some missive on Facebook. The dilemma with a lot of that is it lulls us into a sense that we have acted because it's cathartic, but it hasn't actually brought about any positive benefit in the world. And so we need to taper and limit a bit of that so that we can realize where we are actually called upon to act. But a lot of times people think, tragically, that action is not spiritual. And it's clearly people who have never heard of karma yoga. It's clearly people who haven't actually studied spirituality. But there's this concept that somehow if you're spiritual, it should just be, oh yeah, everything's perfect. Oh yeah, I'm just a human being, not a human doing. I'm just going to be, and everything's an illusion anyway, and it's all perfect. And our spirituality calls us to use every minute and every moment in response to what the moment requires. And one of my favorite stories of that is my guru loves to take walks. He loves to take, daily walks, morning, evening. And he built a temple in the suburbs of Pittsburgh in the US, the Hindu Jain temple. And it's in this beautiful, beautiful suburb. And we go there usually once a year, and there's a beautiful forest behind it, and he loves to take evening walks in the forest. But evening times tend to be, of course, when people show up for darshan. People get off work, and they come, and they want to have darshan. And so he developed this pattern many years ago of whoever's there to just say, okay, now it's time for the evening walk. Whoever wants to come, you can come. Now, I know many of you have met my guru, but for those of you who haven't, he's just the embodiment of tenderness, gentleness. He's not this like big macho, he's tiny in stature, in physical stature, enormous obviously in wisdom, but physically very small. His nature, his energy is very, very peaceful, very tender, very loving. And so one day we go for this walk, and the only one who came was these devotees' daughter. So it was me and her and Puja Swamiji, and we're walking through the park, and there's a fork in the trail, and we go one way, and on the other way, maybe a good 100 meters from us, maybe even a little more, is a guy walking his dogs. Notice it, okay, no big deal, we're walking. And suddenly you hear one of the dogs barking really loudly, and I turn, and one of the dogs has gotten free from its master and is literally charging toward us. The guy, the owner of the dog, is yelling at it, and the dog is charging us. And we keep thinking, okay, the owner's finally going to get a handle on it. He doesn't. The dog's charging. It's this huge dog. And it gets to maybe about where that monitor is from us. And in a moment of total transparency and kind of embarrassment, but in total transparency, this young woman who was walking with us and I just somehow instinctively grab each other and shriek. It's embarrassing to admit. I would like to, pretend that I did something much more effective or even spiritual in the moment. But she and I literally look at each other, and it was like a comic book situation. We basically grab each other and scream. Puja Swamiji turns around to this charging huge dog and goes, "Hut!" And the dog, cowers and whimpers and, basically falls to the ground. And by that point, his owner has come, and the dog goes back to the owner. It was the first and only time in what is now 30 years, this was probably 15, 20 years ago, that I have ever seen my guru channel that level of aggression, machismo, and I'm the big man here energy. But in the moment, that's what was required. Or that dog was absolutely going to sink its teeth into one or all of us. And I mention that because there are moments, and today I believe deeply is a moment, in which every one of us needs to be channeling right action, love-filled action, compassionate action, but effective action. And how can we be those effective instruments and agents of change in the world?
Yeah, just please raise the microphone so that they can see you. But we don't have too much time, I think. Please come.
Hi, Swamiji. Hi, Sadhviji. So my question is related to karma, dharma, and playing a role, which Sadhviji you touched on. So sometimes we have to play many roles in life. So as a husband, as a son, as a father. And sometimes those roles are kind of conflicting. So I'll just give a short example. So my daughter might have a sports day or something. I've committed to that. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, something comes up at work and I've got to fight that also. How do we know what role to play at that time? And also, does our dharma
playing one of those roles also lead to some negative karma? So is negative karma inevitable as well at the same time?
I think the central principle which we can hold on to is all our work is spiritual practice. Instead of work for selfish gain, all our work is spiritual practice. Now, it could be the work you do as a son, as a husband, as a father, as an employee or a manager, as a community leader. In all of that, our goal is spiritual practice. I am serving God in all these ways. If you don't like the God talk, like I said, Swami Ranganathanji said, what can I do for you? And in all of them, I'm not there for my personal gain out of all of this. My goal is as high as enlightenment or God realization. Don't put it on your Facebook status. But internally, we are all spiritual seekers. Or it could just be, if you want to make it less spiritual, it is to be helpful. It is to be of service to others. And then take a call. Then it will depend on the specifics of the situation. Is it utterly important for your child that you be there on that particular occasion? Then you might try to get out of the work commitment. Or does that work commitment demand a lot for me and it's absolutely essential that you be there? Then you have to take that call. But in all circumstances, this is my worship of you. And so this is how we navigate. Have a central uniting principle, and the central uniting principle should be a high principle, a noble principle. At the very least, an ethical principle, a selfless principle, and if possible, a spiritual principle.
We can take another
Somebody
one.
else? We can take one more, maybe. Oh, there's somebody right there.
Hi, Swamiji. Hi, Sadhviji. Thank you so much. My question is very simple. One thing that I really struggle with is, how do you listen to the voice within that is the voice of your soul and the voice of the mind? Because sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish between intuition and instinctiveness. So if you can help in knowing that.
We need some principles there. Vivekananda suggested, for example, 3 principles. If it is selfless, it's likely to be true. If it is selfish, it's likely to be untrue. It's coming from the instincts, from the... If it is, he said, whatever strengthens you, accept that as nectar. Whatever weakens you, physically, morally, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, reject it as poison. Whatever weakens you. Third, whatever unites is likely to be true. Whatever divides is likely to be false. So these are principles, but you have to apply them. Another way you would do it is, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in things to be done and not done, what is right and what is wrong, let Shastra be your pramana, your criterion. Judge it by the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible or the core the scriptures, what you consider to be your scripture. So that is a neutral judge, a principle on which I can see whether what is coming from within me is from my soul, my conscience, or is it just my likes and dislikes speaking to me?
I would add just one additional piece to the beautiful, amazing list that Swami Vivekananda ji gave us, just from what I've experienced in my own body. If it's expansive, he mentioned if it's uniting, and in a way that's the same, but in the felt sense in the body. To me, I know it's truth when it feels expansive inside, and it's the mind and the games and the stories when it feels contracting inside. And so fear causes contraction. Hoarding, grabbing causes contraction. Division causes contraction. Love, truth, openness, giving, oneness is expansion. The other thing that I have noticed on a personal level that's very helpful is when we say the voice of the mind, that's a bit of a misnomer for most of us. Now, some may have come from families in which the parents were basically enlightened or almost enlightened, and they grew up in very, very powerfully spiritual families and backgrounds where they were honored and seen and loved as the spiritual beings they are. And in that case, they may have just the sort of generic run-of-the-mill voice of the mind that is part of the package of human life. But for those of us who don't have that background, what I've noticed is it's not just one voice in my mind. There's so many voices in my mind. There's a voice of different parents. There's a voice of teachers. There's a voice of culture. There's a voice that I've internalized from, a 5th grade teacher who was getting a divorce and made my life miserable and there are voices that began as outside voices, but then they become inside voices. We see billboards, we see commercials, we see advertisements that tell us how we should be, what we should look like, what we should do. And when we don't measure up, the external becomes internal. I'm wrong, I'm not good enough. And again, if we were blessed to be born in an enlightened household, we're still going to move through the world and be exposed to those, but we're not going to necessarily internalize them as much. It's not quite such a fertile ground. But some of us have very fertile grounds. And so when I first started working with it, I found it wasn't just one voice of the mind. There were so many. And I got to peel back layer by layer. And what I found works really well is noticing them, being able to say, oh, that voice in my head that says, don't take that risk because you're worthless and stupid and you can't make anything happen. Well, that was my 5th grade teacher getting a divorce. That isn't true. And that isn't me. That was a voice I internalized. And you can go kind of, if you get very subtle in your introspection, and you watch the mind and you notice, okay, this voice. Yes, in our core meditation, we're not hooking the awareness into them. We're just bringing the awareness back to the breath, to a mantra, to the present moment. But introspection, contemplation, insight are also really valuable practices. And to just notice, where did those voices come from? And then you can go, oh, this was my mother. She didn't mean to mess me up. She was doing her best. But she was scared, she was confused, she was going through this. This is what she said, not meaning to say it. That I internalized. Now it is a voice in my head. That desire, that fear, that's not core, I've taken it in. And so the more clarity you can see the different voices with, the more easy it is to tease them apart when they start speaking in your mind, and then to realize, oh, okay, obviously this isn't soul, there's 5th grade teacher, or there's this one, that one. And then you realize, that which is left tends to be much quieter. Doesn't yammer quite as much, it's not nearly as frenetic. That's another distinction I've noticed, is the mind is quite frenetic. The voice of the soul, it's not frenetic like that. It's not panicked. The universe is really patient. You don't get it this life, you'll get it next life. It's all right. The mind is really impatient. Gotta have it. Need it right now, right now. And you'll slowly, slowly, slowly be able to distinguish. This is that vivek, discrimination, that we learn and we practice.
Hi, we've just got 2 or 3 things before we finish. And the announcements first. If I remember the announcement, there's 2 announcements I must remember to make, okay? One of them is there's a little table over there with books, and there's Sadhviji's books, and she'll be signing them, and she'll be here today and tomorrow. Swamiji's books are available in all good bookshops, and the website that starts with the letter A, which I won't mention. Sorry, I don't mention the word A. It's a political thing, sorry. And I would like you all to just take 2 seconds just to close your eyes. Because I think in Vedanta there's 3 principal steps that you take, and one of them is listening, one of them is reflection and reasoning, and the other one is meditation and integration. So it would be useless if you just walk off and go for your masala dosa now and not actually reflect on anything you've heard. So could you just close your eyes for 2 seconds and just listen, hear, reflect, reason with yourself, and integrate it into your life and meditate on it just for a short moment on your Saturday evening. Just a very short moment. What you've heard. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Om 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 Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all creatures be happy, may all creatures be free, and may none suffer. I'm sure you'll get the benefit and the grace of these 2 lovely people tomorrow for the rest of the festival. Could you give them a big hand, please, for a lovely evening? Thank you. A big hand for them. And there's one more thing. There's a very special person that Sadhviji wants to just talk to you about, who she's asked me to remind, very special
Yeah, if
woman.
everyone can just stay for 2 minutes. We've spoken today about so many of the great saints of India. We have here with us our Puja Swami Dayananji Saraswati Ji Maharaj also, who's not just picture, but actual teachings, wisdom, presence is here with us as well. One of those other great saints was named Dada J.P. Vaswaniji. And today is his birthday. He's no longer in his body. He would have been 107 if he were in his body today. But he was truly one of the great, great, beautiful saints. And his birthday is honored each year in what is called by the Sadhu Vaswani mission a moment of calm and a day of forgiveness. And we've spoken so much today about forgiveness, about stillness, about coming back to ourselves. And so in honor, in reverence, and in community together with all of their community, which is, of course, our community, we are all one, to just honor that moment of calm and to just take 2 minutes. We'll just close our eyes again and just allow ourselves to find the inner stillness and peace that is automatic when we let go. And the awareness that it isn't something outside which steals our peace, but it is us holding on to it. And just take a moment, and as you exhale, let go. Let go of anger. Let go of grudges. Let go of pain. Not intellectually, not with a story, but just exhale. Give it back to the universe. Recognize it is not you. Let it go. And allow yourself to drop deeper and deeper into that very core of who you are. And as you gently open your eyes, hold on. Hold on to that awareness inside. Carry that calmness with you. And then offer it. Offer it to all of those you meet, wherever you go. Because you are that vibrating divinity. So share that, spread that, live that and be it. And so much love to you all, and such a great blessing to be here with Puja Swamiji, to be here together with all of you today.
Thank you very much indeed. Aren't we privileged? Two of the greatest minds here on the single stage at the festival. Thank you once again, Sadhviji, Swamiji.